Imran Khan, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you.
It is 15 years since you founded your party, Tehreek-e-Insaf. The greatest performance you ever had at the polls was to win one parliamentary seat, and yet you now say that the ideas represented by your party, their time has come. Why do you say that?
Well, that was 9 years back when we contested our last election. And the party was only 5 years old and obviously not equipped to contest the general elections. Now, 9 years down the line, it is a party which is now spreading faster than any other party in Pakistan. In fact, other parties are going down. Tehreek-e-Insaf is going up, and it is the first party of choice for the young in Pakistan. And all opinion polls are now saying this.
Yeah, I've had you before saying you shouldn't believe opinion polls because you say, of course, in the past, your poll performance was terrible. Why should we believe opinion polls now, particularly in a country like Pakistan where they tend to overestimate the importance of the urban, the educated?
Opinion polls are an indication. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can translate them into success, but it is an indication of the popularity of the party. For instance, in 2008, the opinion polls did actually get things right. More or less what they predicted, the sort of seat arrangement, is actually what happened. So there's no, if we can now get ourselves organized, we have the public support to convert this support into votes.
And yet that optimism works against the grain of your basic political message, which is that Pakistan, and this is a phrase you've used, is essentially run by a political mafia. You seem to believe that virtually every public office holder in Pakistan is a crook. So why should a temporary rise in the polls change that basic reality?
Well, let me just give you the statistics presented to the Supreme Court by the Election Commission, of course, on our petition. Out of the 80 million registered voters in Pakistan in 2008, 37 million voters were fraudulent, bogus, didn't exist. And this has been thrown out by the Supreme Court.
But aren't you making my point for me? If this is the system that you are trying to break into, and indeed bring down, it is going to take something extraordinary. Just believing that getting your message out to the Pakistani people and campaigning in the next election due in 2013, that isn't going to cut it, because the system doesn't allow people like you to win.
But Stephen, this is exactly what I'm saying, why I'm optimistic. Because an independent Supreme Court has thrown out 45% of the registered vote, which was bogus. So, and they've asked the Election Commission to register another 35 million new voters, which were not registered before. Young voters are to be registered. 45% of the vote thrown out, so that's where the optimism lies. You actually might have the semblance of a free and fair election because the Supreme Court is independent.
Well, in the response to Salman Taseer, it was there when the killing of bin Laden was announced. Your first reaction, you said, was to feel anger and humiliation on the news that bin Laden was dead. Explain that.
Stephen, how would you feel if someone, your ally, comes from across the border and kills someone in your own country? And here you are giving immense sacrifices for that neighbor or for that country. Pakistan has lost 35,000 people dead, $70 billion lost to the economy.
But we're talking about Osama bin Laden. We're talking about the mastermind of the 9/11 attacks. Was it not perhaps a sense of shame that he was in Pakistan, and as the Americans went on to claim, almost inconceivable the Pakistanis did not know in some form that he was there? Maybe shame about that, but also a sense of relief that, thank God, he is no longer capable of leading Al-Qaeda and its terror activities.
Stephen, for one, whether Pakistan government was complicit or whether it was incompetent, as said by Panata, I'm talking as a member of Pakistani public who's not part of the government.
Well, you're talking as a responsible leader of Pakistan, a man who aspires to actually lead the country.
Exactly. And now, how would I feel but I'm a Pakistani citizen, but my country has given 35,000 people dead in a war we had nothing to do with. $70 billion lost to the economy when total aid has been $20 billion. How would I feel that my ally, who we are fighting for, does not trust us, instead comes and conduct the operation itself?
How does it help?
Should they not have told our government? If it's either it's an ally or it's not an ally.
How does it help in terms of the future stability of Pakistan for you to tell the Americans that you want to see them completely out of your country in terms of intelligence cooperation, in terms of their anti-terror activities in Pakistan. You want to cut all ties. And you believe that will lead to greater stability. When the Americans are alleging right now that the ISI, the Pakistani intelligence agency, is actively helping the Haqqani network and other militants do their deeds inside Afghanistan.
First of all, if this myth being spun that 4,000 or 5,000 Haqqani Taliban is the reason why the U.S. is not succeeding in Afghanistan. 140,000 U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan, greatest military machine in history, is not succeeding because of these 4,000 or 5,000 fighters that are supposed to be holed up in North Waziristan. Does that make sense? That's number one. But I just come back to that.
Does America not have a right, in terms of self-defense, to pursue these people if the Pakistani government will not pursue them?
But are we Pakistanis not allowed to criticize American policy? Are slaves allowed to just say,
does the United States have a right of self-defense if these people are not going to be rounded up and detained by the Pakistani government? Does the U.S. not have a right to do it?
But does the Pakistani government also have not any semblance of sovereignty in our country? That maybe they are fighting this war on terror, which is why 35,000 people have died. Can they not fight it their own way? Now,
their own way brings us back to the quote from David Cameron of last year. Consistently, the Pakistani has looked both ways, he said, on the issue of terrorism.
God, if I was the Prime Minister of Pakistan, I would have immediately told them that, look, we will fight this war our own way. We don't want any interference. We don't want your money. We don't want your aid. Look, it doesn't mean cutting the relationship with the Americans. It means we will fight our own way.
It does, because it takes two. And if you had your way, the Americans would cut their relationship with Pakistan. It's quite clear. And that would involve billions of dollars of aid at a time when Pakistan, goodness knows...
Pakistan government would ensure no terrorism from our soil. Would they not want that?
Imran Khan, we have to end there. Thank you for being on Hard Talk.
Thank you.
Open and transparent with each other. I've interviewed many government officials and ministers around the world over many years, and they always say, oh, I'm not responsible for any corruption at all, and I believe in transparency.
I do.
You do?
Oh,
so
yes,
how many properties do you and your family own?
It's all declared in my tax returns.
Well, just give me the answer, because I don't know. How many properties do you and your family own?
I have my main residence in Pakistan, which has been taken over by by this regime. So I haven't got too many properties. But
how many properties do you and your family own?
My net worth is what has been reported.
How many properties do you and your family own?
One sole residence.
You and your family own one property.
My sole residence.
So all of these stories in the Pakistani press about multiple properties owned by your family inside Pakistan, property interests overseas, including in Dubai, wherever, and we're sitting in London. Wherever, and we're sitting in London. We're sitting in London. Do you own nothing in London?
No.
Your family, not just you, your family.
No, not at all.
Own nothing.
No, because
and Dubai?
The government.
Dubai?
My sons have just one villa, which is owned by them. They're in business for the last 17 years.
So when I asked you how many properties you and your family own, and you said one, that wasn't strictly true.
No, it is strictly true because they're adults, they're married, 17 years they're in business, so they're independent of me.
You know very well that when the NAB looked at your assets, they were looking at you and your family.
I have no issue. My family, everything is accounted for. That's exactly it.
See, if all of this is so clear-cut, you only own one property in the entire world. Your tax records have been kept and given to the authorities over the last 20 years. If everything is so crystal clear, why do you not go to Pakistan and make this case in a court of law?
Well, the court of law, my lawyers were there. I'm here for medical treatment. I have a cervical issue.
You've been here for what, best part of 3 years on this medical issue?
Almost, yes, I am.
Are you still really suffering?
Yes, I am.
And you couldn't possibly get back to Pakistan?
Well, let's see what's happening in Pakistan. Where are the human rights? What's happening in NAB custody? Where people dozens of people have been killed, virtually.
I'm sorry, you're saying that people being investigated by the NAB, the National Accountability Bureau, have been killed?